So is this how you film your stuff? I've never been around for one of these. This is so cool.
I'm just going to avoid saying anything important until he goes away. Alright, Spielberg Project 5, let's go. Today we're going to be talking about something evil, which is the actual title. It's not saying we're going to be talking about something evil. It's another made-for-TV movie, the last one. The next movie we'll be doing is his first theatrical release. This one is also notable for being, as far as I know, Steven Spielberg's only horror movie. And it's kind of a shame because it's better than a lot of the other horror movies that you see. Granted, this was also the 70s, and there weren't a whole lot of stereotypes that you could fall into, and they were still making the stereotypes, so some of it probably stereotypical. I'm not very familiar with horror movies. I don't really enjoy them. I don't like slasher, and I don't like supernatural very much. But this one was actually very good. I enjoyed it. It starts off shot of old man being attacked by what appears to be the wind. He runs into a barn, climbs up the ladder to the hay. I used to know what this was called, the upper level of the barn. He goes to the door, I think it's like the hay window or something like that, I'm not sure. And he falls down to his death. And then it cuts forward an unknown amount of time to this family that for some reason they're on the property of this house. They find out that it's for sale, and the wife thinks it's just absolutely adorable and she wants to buy it. And the husband, who is actually played by the dad in A Christmas Story, which I found that really weird. I'd never seen him in anything else before, and it was very funny not hearing him go, "Ralphie!" They buy the house. When they first move in, the mother notices a image on the barn door that she asks about it, and the local tells her it's supposed to ward off evil. And so she likes the shape in the picture. It's called a, not a pentagram, a pentagraph, something like that. She starts making these little medallions that have that shape on it and starts giving them to her kids. And then one night, fairly soon afterwards, she hears a baby crying. And she goes to her kids naturally and checks on them. They all seem to be doing fine. And then she hears it again, but this time she's in her kid's room and she knows that it's not them. So she goes outside and it's coming from the barn. So she goes into the barn because she's a mother and she hears a baby crying. She can't let that stand. She opens the door and she hears it coming from a stove, of all things. She goes and opens the stove and there's just a rat and the baby crying goes away. Then she hears her son, like, having a night terror. He's asleep, but he's screaming. And so she goes and holds him and tells him everything's going to be okay, blah, 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 blah.
But it never is.
No, it never is. The next day, the father, who is an ad executive, is filming a commercial at their house for some kind of apple-based candy bar. I like apple stuff, but I don't see the appeal there. The sound guy is going, hey, there's this weird noise that I can't get rid of, and I don't know what's going on. The actress who is filming with them sees the son wearing the little picture thing, and she drapes it over the mic randomly, and the sound goes away mysteriously. That night they have a huge party for the cast and crew, and everybody's milling about and having a good time. The producer or other director or something is hitting on this actress, and he offers to take her home, and they're driving, and they get attacked by what seem to be bugs, and like cracks appear on the windshield, and then they drive off a cliff, and the car like randomly explodes, which should have happened inside of Duel at the end. We covered this last week, but it didn't. Meanwhile, there's a local neighbor who keeps doing weird stuff. The mother looks out the window and sees him cutting off the head of a chicken and sprinkling the blood all over the ground. She's like, that's fishy. So that night they have a party with the locals to meet the neighbors and everything. One of the locals is an older gentleman who's very interested in strange stories and the occult kind of thing. And he very definitely believes in the devil, and so he's got all these books on possession and things that demons are known for doing. We all know that one person.
Continue.
So she starts talking to him and tells him about the baby crying incident, which he finds fascinating. He lends her a couple of the books, and so she starts reading. She finds out about this thing that you can do where you make a circle and you have to consecrate it. And if you get into it when you're being attacked by the devil, then he can't enter it as long as you are saying some form of scripture. The guy literally says, it doesn't matter, just something from the Bible. There's a couple of verses that might be really funny to try ward off the devil with. She actually paints that on her children's nursery floor. The next day, the son is out chasing a frog, and it ends up going into the barn, and he goes in, and the door slams shut behind him, and that's never a good thing.
in movies.
That night, she hears the baby crying again. She goes out into the barn, and she goes into a side room this time. She's getting closer and closer to the baby sound, and finally she comes across this jar that's like glowing, and she sees it and screams, and the wind blows and locks her in, and she's trying to burst out. She finally manages to get out of the door, and the wind is just howling, and we know from the opening sequence that the wind is bad, and she runs in the house because her son is screaming again, and she goes up into their room and grabs her daughter and her son and pulls them into the circle, and they wait out whatever's going on. It should be noted at this point that the father frequently spends the night inside New York because it's a long commute and it's too long to get to his job every day. At this point, the mother's sanity starts unraveling a little bit. She's outside and she's making more of the little medallion things. Her son starts throwing a ball up against the side of the house, and the noise starts to bother her, and she's just getting really, really frazzled, and she starts smashing the medallions, and she goes inside and is just, leaned over the sink and gripping it, and her knuckles are turning white. She looks out the window and she sees her son going into one of those weird garden things. This freaks her out because it's near the barn, and she goes in and the wind starts howling again while she's in there, and branches are getting tangled around her, and she's trying to find him, and she's calling his name and he's not responding, and finally he jumps out and grabs her, and she takes him out of the tunnel thing. She starts freaking out on him, and he's getting scared, and she's chasing him and trying to hold him down and punish him, and she's throwing a fit. She calls her husband fairly soon after and tells him that he needs to come home because she did something bad, and she essentially beat the kid. He's got bruises all over, and she's telling him, "This isn't me. I've never hit the kids. Why in the world would I do that?" And she knows that she did it, but she has no idea why she did it. She just can't wrap her mind around it. She tells him that it's the house, and she's positive that something is trying to possess her and that the devil is after her. So she tells him that he needs to sell the house. The husband tells her that he'll contact a realtor in the city the next day. Meanwhile, a guy is editing the commercial they filmed, and he pulls the father aside and he says, "You're going to want to take a look at this," and he shows him that there's a reflection of these like glowing eyes inside of the window, and it's that point that the father realizes there's something amiss with this and he needs to get home now. Back at the house, she tells her kids to go upstairs, and she goes downstairs and she hears the baby crying again, which at this point, like anytime that starts, you start to get really freaked out. It's coming from her kitchen cabinet this time, and she opens it, and there's the glowing jar again. She screams and throws it shut, and then she runs upstairs, and inside of her bedroom there's this little imp statue that you saw earlier, and she takes it and smashes it, and then she's kind of looking at herself in the mirror, and she's completely at her wit's end, and she's convinced that she can't trust herself, and something else is taking over her, and she can't be trusted around her kids. So she locks them in their bedroom, and she tells her son that she has to go and that he can't see her anymore. And so she's going to the barn to jump out of the top window like the other guy fell, and essentially kill herself in order to stop the evil from happening. And right when she's about to jump, the guy that was spreading the chicken blood jumps her from behind and pulls her down and tells her the devil is not after her. In fact, he's actually after her son. And he asks where her son is, and she said, "I've locked him inside of his room," and he says, "With the baby?" And so then they both run out of the barn. Meanwhile, the father comes pulling in, and they're running and saying, "We need you now," and he hops out of the car, throws the cab driver money, and then runs into the house, and they're both upstairs, and they hear the wind inside of the bedroom. They're trying to break down the door and finally get it open, and the son is basically floating, and the baby, oddly enough, doesn't look very freaked out. I think that was a misstep on Spielberg's part. She tells the father to grab the baby, and meanwhile she grabs her son and pulls him into the circle forcibly because the devil doesn't want in the circle, so he keeps trying to move the son out, and she basically just tells him over and over again, I love you, I'm not going to let him take you, etc., 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 and eventually the wind stops and the kid seems to return to normal, and then the next shot is them driving away and leaving the house as is.